Hi, welcome to vlog number 38. Unfortunately, number 37, for some reason, has some technical issues, so the sound disappeared after 40 seconds. So, fingers crossed, this one goes much better. I suppose I can recap on the kind of message from last week. It hasn't really changed a great deal because obviously you couldn't hear what I said last week. Um, if we look at here's my squatting data, front squats at the moment. So at the minute it's the back into progressive training, having this kind of weird post-COVID period. Um, and quite literally, as the graph will explain, it's very up and down, and some days it's more frustrating than other days it's a little bit more positive. So the blue line at the top is the first set per session, which is 5 reps at 85 kilos, and that's kind of bouncing around about the 0.7 meters per second mark, and it can stay pretty stable there. It doesn't really drop below the 0.7 meters per second mark, so that's okay, and that's saying moving pretty fast. And then as the weight goes up, progress becomes a lot more variable. So I'd probably say since coming out of that the amber period, which is the first week I felt I could train properly again after having COVID. The weights have stayed roughly around about 0.5 meters per second for 3 reps at 105 kilos, and hasn't really kind of showed much progression. It's kind of bounced around that somewhere between 0.47 and 0.52, without really any kind of trend to show that it's progressively increasing. And then even more variable than that is what I do at 115 kilos. This is just one repetition, just the single rep. The plan was over weeks would be to increase the number of repetitions, firstly at 105, then at 115 to get to 5 in total. But that's just, I'm not seeing a trend that would allow me to kind of add reps really, because as you can see from there, I had a couple of good weeks where the numbers were looking high, and then it's kind of dropped off and declined, and now it's on the ascent again. So today's rep was 0.4 meters per second, which is fast for what I've done, and one of the two fastest values I've recorded for 115. But because of this pattern I've had of kind of getting good numbers, then dropping down back into the sub 0.3 meters per second range, I kind of need to see a more consistent pattern before I can be confident that I've had some meaningful change, and it's not just an individual variation. So I've been trying to think about why that could be. Variation in daily life. Obviously, I've still got two young kids, and sleep is not consistent for me, and won't be for a period of time. But that hasn't gotten better recently. The thing that I think I can attach some of that variability to would be this ongoing hip issue that I've got, and it's quite irritating, both physically and kind of psychologically as well, because it's not a major issue. I'm not torn a muscle or anything like that, and it's not a major muscle group either. It's just that one of these little bits of muscle that kind of can unstick and unglue a larger muscle, a larger movement, and that's what's happening at the minute. So it's around TFL, which is kind of that kind of side pocket where your trouser pocket would be, and then the hip flexor, which is between top of the pubis and attaching to the head of the femur, which you've got some images there for those people who can't quite picture what I mean. And he really is profoundly affecting me eccentrically in the descent phase of the squat, and it's unbalancing as well. So this has got this right hip is being quite grumbly, for want of a better term. So that's affecting my eccentric lowering. It's affecting my kind of balance, and then also what would happen then is also affect the stretch reflex you get at the bottom of the squat to drive out there with great velocity. So I become much more concentrically dominant force production rather than the concentric force plus this kind of plyometric fascial stretch that you would get. And if you're descending less quickly, because you can't apply that kind of eccentric braking force to your hip flexors, it's going to affect the kind of stretch reflex you can get as well. So it's just this little group of muscles that you wouldn't think much of that is just really impacting my ability to progress in the squat. So it's kind of teaching me a lesson to not neglect these little smaller muscles, And people often laugh at me, kind of, I'm spending an eternity trying to warm up because I've got to get, first of all, I've got to kind of relieve some kind of discomfort, try and fix some biomechanical issues at the root cause of it. So I'm trying to do some soft tissue trigger point therapy work so I don't feel the discomfort quite so profoundly, and then work on some rehab exercises in the warm up to free up the hip so I can hopefully squat better. And that's kind of happened a little bit today. I think I've kind of seen the benefit of 2 or 3 days of really consistently and quite aggressively getting after it. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if I can maintain that level of attention on the rehab side of things, I can get past this grumbly hip and see that translate into better squatting performances. So I think a lot of it is that different days that hip becomes more or less irritated, and that then has a bigger, a more profound effect on the heavier loads, because I think it's a capacity issue. So the hip can cope with 85 kilos quite well. It doesn't really kind of bother me at 85 kilos. But when I put more load through that load exceeds what the ability of that muscle is to cope with it, because it's irritating, diminished. So that's my kind of anatomy, biomechanics hat thrown on and trying to unpick some of that variability and get rid of some physical discomfort. So in terms of other news, so that's a bit mixed, a bit up and down. Body mass wise, post second child, I had a bad hit, and then Christmas came and had another hit. But it's descending on the way down. Trying my best to be consistent with diet, trying to be protein focused, not strict, but getting there. Definitely focus on general levels of physical activity. Get 10,000 steps a day. Hit like a moving calorie on the Apple Watch, making sure I'm hitting like 1,000 moving calories a day, and just trying to target from a physical activity perspective, a training perspective, and then a diet perspective. But that's trending in the right direction, and hopefully it'll continue to something below 94 and then beyond. And the final bit of information is going to my peak power, relative peak power from the weightlifting tests. So the blue line will be three repetitions of a 70 kilo clean, and then the orange line will be 3 repetitions of a 50 kilo snatch. I think the snatch hasn't really tailed off really. It's kind of stayed relatively consistent. It'd be nice for it to go up, but again, I'm not doing anything explicitly to get better at these two lifts. It's just a way of tracking if training's transferring to weightlifting, and if I'm down or up on my kind of physical capacity on a given day. So the clean is starting to show a nice pattern of coming out of that post-COVID hole that I found myself in. So that's slightly good news. I've no massive troughs, so no kind of big declines. That's good. Let's see the snatch kind of climb with it. Maybe there's last 2-3 weeks it started to show a bit of a climb out of there. But I think that could be more obviously seen in the clean. But as you can see from the clean, I fell quite a distance, so it's not quite back to where I was yet. Whereas the snatch, I think it stayed roughly about thereabouts. But it'd be nice to see those two numbers climb. So probably slightly more optimistic and positive version of the vlog than I gave last week. Could be certainly a lot better. Keep targeting this hip, and hopefully I'll see some more profound improvements in the next couple of weeks.